So now I can finally do that last look at the 2020-2021 season and what might be on tap for the Florida Panthers, the last team to lose the play-in round that I haven't talked about yet. And good timing. And this was of course planned for people who follow the channel. I've been delaying Florida until we know who the general manager is, and it's interesting to me. So they had what 10, 12 names we know of that were attached to the Florida Panthers, and then Bill Zito came out. I don't remember hearing his name leading up to it. Maybe we were just so caught up in guys like Kevin Weeks and Ed Olczyk being mentioned as guys we know from television, of course, that we missed out on a more obvious choice, which would be Bill Zito. But Bill Zito has some work ahead of him. He has some cap space with which to work, but it's kind of deceptive cap space. Coach, of course, Joel Quenneville. Joel Quenneville didn't seem to be happy during the 4-game loss to the New York Islanders. I don't think this is a Joel Quenneville team. I just didn't feel like he was all that happy with the roster when that series was all said and done, and he didn't look very happy during some parts of that play-in round against the Islanders. Now, we've watched the Islanders as they've proven they're not just a one-trick pony. At the time I'm recording this, they're up 3-2 on the Philadelphia Flyers in round 2, and they look like they are poised to do some big things for the first time since 1993. The problem is, that's little solace to a team that hasn't won around since 1996, which is the Florida Panthers. And so for the Florida Panthers, they need to show some upward momentum and show it quickly. Now, you'll always hear they should move them to Quebec. Yeah, the thing is, they have a really sweet lease in Florida. The thing is, while they have that sweet lease, they're also not making a ton of money, so they're barely breaking even in good years. And this year, they're losing some money. And with the economy being devastated this year and the NHL obviously being affected as well, while yes, they recuperate some of those losses by having a playoffs, they've still lost, depending on your estimates, it could be $1 billion they've lost this year. And Florida's going to be one of those teams that was already losing money before this happened. So the rumor is that ownership wants to see a cut to the bottom line next year. They don't want to be spending to the cap, since they spent to the cap and they got a team that lost the play-in round, didn't technically make the playoffs, didn't reach the round of 16. So, and they weren't trending in a direction to make the playoffs at the time of the pause either. So this is not a team that we look at and say, well, there's a reason for hope, because I've been doing that for the last couple of years. I can't do it right now. I can't. As much as I saw them as possibly being a playoff team this year, and I saw them as possibly being a playoff team last year, I just haven't seen enough from them. And when you look at their roster going forward, I don't know. So their top 6 forwards for next year potentially could be, and I'm saying could be because we know this is not what's going to happen, but with guys under contract for next year to be Huberdeau, Barkov, Vetrano, Toninato, Achari, Connolly, obviously not going to be the top 6. Obviously, you're going to have to bring back at least one of these guys, and Borgstrom, Heponiemi, Tippett are all guys who could push their way into the top 6. Owen Tippett, I think, is the most likely of the 3. Borgstrom, though, Heponiemi, it's possible one of those 3 ends up being a top 6 player next year. And it's likely that'll be the plan for Bill Zito looking at this roster. And coming from Columbus, a team which has done its best to improve from within, for the most part, minus the deadline last year for Columbus, the expectation is going to be, okay, so we're gonna go through and improve from within again with this team as we did with Columbus. That'd be his thinking. Top 4 defensemen, this is where things get kind of dicey. Their blue line needs to be improved. Weegar, Ekblad, Yandel, Matheson, something has to change. And of course, the obvious one to get traded out of the 4 is Matheson, but the cap hit, I don't know how many teams are going to want to take on Matheson's cap, and I'm not sure how much trade value he has. And then the other ones that would have the trade value, Yandel might, Ekblad obviously would, but what are you getting back for Ekblad? He's a number 1 draft pick. He's a guy with a decent contract. If he ends up fulfilling his potential, you don't want to just give up on that. So I don't know what Bill Zito's necessarily going to do and whether or not one of the core guys might go, but some core guys are already on the UFA side of things. Bobrovsky and Drieger in net, I don't see that changing. Montembeault, of course, being the number 3, could push Drieger down to number 3. But whoever backs up Bobrovsky, the reality is Bobrovsky's probably going to be asked to play 55, 60 games. He did not live up to that contract this year. And I don't think I'm going to be shocking anybody by saying that, but he didn't. And so it's a $10 million price tag that definitely eats into their ability to get this top 6 to where they need to be and to fix what's wrong with the blue line. The offensive side for Ekblad and Yandel is great, but they need really smart, solid defensive defensemen to be able to back them up and help them achieve their utmost potential, because they don't have to worry about playing back as much. Which I'm not saying Yandel and Ekblad necessarily do that a ton now. I know I've seen Florida posts about it. I know their fans kind of go a little bit squirrely about the defensive side of the game from Yandel or Ekblad, but that is something that Bill Zito is going to need to fix. They have $21 million in cap space if they don't sign any of the free agents who've left. They have to sign at least one of the free agents who could possibly leave. Between Hoffman and Dadonov, I was leaning towards keeping Dadonov. After seeing the play-in round against the Islanders, I'm leaning towards Hoffman. Now, whoever they keep, Hoffman, of course, would bump Vetrano out, which would bump Connolly out, or maybe it keeps Connolly in the top 6, bumps Vetrano out. And then if they found a way to keep both Hoffman and Dadonov, you have to think that'd be at least $10 million, but it would solidify that top 6. Eric Howla, who they brought in as a rental, maybe they keep him. Maybe he slips into a top 6 spot and plays for probably less money than what he's been getting this season. Brian Boyle, if he wants to come back for one more year, and that's an if at this stage, I think Florida would be interested. And Pesek. Pesek, I think, will end up being back with this team. He can play on the blue line. He can play as a forward. He can play a depth role. He's not going to cost them a ton of money. I'd be kind of surprised if he wasn't back. Restricted free agents. Wallmark, of course, as a restricted free agent. He's a third liner. Tony Nato. I like Tony Nato. The offensive upside likely isn't there. And Uyghur. How much is Uyghur worth? And that's a key thing, because Uyghur and Wallmark, the two W's here, they're going to eat into that $21 million. If Hoffman and Dadonov stick around, that's going to eat into that heavily. And then if rumors that ownership didn't want to spend to the cap and they wanted to cut $10 million in expenses were to be true, that'd be it. That's all they could do. And so basically you would come back next year with ideally a different roster, but instead they'd have almost the same roster, maybe with a guy like Tippett on the roster instead. So, unless Brady Keeper was to be a top 4, unless Prisky can jump in top 4 spot, I'm not sure how Florida fixes this blue line, because this to me is the biggest issue. Bobrovsky's contract is an issue, but there's not really anything they can do with that right now. The draft, they're going to get some help in the draft. At number 12, I would think they draft a defenseman. I'd be very surprised if Florida doesn't draft a blue liner. Number 43, again, deep draft. Number 43 won't be a guy who plays for you this year, but we'll see what they do at that pick, and if they can get somebody who's slid down from the first round or early second that was expected to already be gone. Then they have picks 74 and as low as 93. They have the Avs the third round draft pick. So if the Avalanche lose against Dallas, obviously this won't be the number 93 draft pick. That moves up a bit. But if they were to win the Stanley Cup, it'd be 93. That's the lowest it can be. And again, can you take that pick and another pick and maybe trade your way up into another second round pick? It'll be interesting to see what Florida does. There is no patience now for a rebuild. You can't. You can't go out right now and say, all right, well, this core can't get her done, so we're going to let Hoffman and Dadonov go, and then we're going to try to trade either Barkov or Huberdeau. That's not going to happen. So whatever fixes Florida finds, I would say bring back Hoffman. Of the two, I would bring back Hoffman. Find a way to get Wallmark and Uyghur signed as well, and see if Howla will take a good deal. And then see what money you've got left, and whether or not you can talk ownership into spending any of that money. And try to find further improvements to this blue line. I would expect Bill Zito to make a deal. I would expect Bill Zito to maybe look into trading an Achari. And here's why. Achari had 20 goals this year. I don't expect Achari to hit 20 goals again in his career. I love Noel Acciari. He's a hard worker. I think what we saw with Acciari this year, I think, is lightning in a bottle. And if he had increased trade value, I think Florida would be wise to at least look into it. Just look into it and see, because again, he's a 20 goal scorer this season. I think he might be 12 or 13 going forward. But if you can find a team that needs offense and is willing to give you something for Acciari, I think that might be worth looking at. And as much as I love Vetrano, and I know that he projects to potentially be a top 6 if they don't sign anybody and if none of these guys come in, I don't know that Vetrano is going to be in Florida next year. I am wondering. I'm wondering if Vetrano might be on his way out, because something's got to be changed. And Vetrano was a healthy scratch at times this year as well. So I expect some big changes in Florida. But the thing is, they can't sell. They have to show improvement next year. Next year, they have to prove me wrong in making the playoffs, like they've proven me wrong by not making the playoffs when I predicted they would. I want to see Florida succeed. I want to see a Florida Panthers team make the playoffs and actually show that upward momentum. But that success has been very elusive. And the New York Islanders, at times in that series, made it look easy. It's not shameful to have that happen, because the Islanders have done that against other teams as well. They did that with the Capitals, and they're doing that with the Flyers at the time I'm recording this as well, at times in those games. But still, patience has to eventually be done, where you say, no, we need to show improvement, we need to get better. And that improvement has to happen this year for Florida. Let me know your thoughts. Who should Florida target? Does Florida spend to the cap, or does ownership stick to the idea of we're not spending to the cap because we're not getting to the playoffs with a cap team anyways? And who do you move? What do you look for? That kind of thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.